The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination, and at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Dressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Its emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by me, Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times, by means of Prajnaparamita, fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. Teata om gate gate paragate parasangati bodhisoha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. The Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. The Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Bharata Sundara Samaraya Mede Atong Gate Gate Paragate Parasangati Bodhiso Baba Gonjo Zonji Gai Nembe Doji Je Oba Doji Mebo Doji Je Wadoji Jagi Baji Medo Beju Donji Je Dingo Yezo Ngirin Donya Je Jo Je Wada Midon Ve Jinda Nirvana Domba Dun Yim Bun Zun Zun Yo Yi Na Yi De Ya Ne Na Ele Yo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive knowledge and love. And let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Ram Niradayami. Chidan Joye Jonam La Janjo Badu Dani Jazu Jidagi Juni Jibe Zonam Jidrola Ben Jizon Jerubaryo. Chidan Joye Jonam La Janjo Badu Dani Jazu Jidagi Juni Jibe Zonam Jidrola Ben Jizon Jerubaryo.
뭐야 당가 다른 가서 대접을 좋은 날이 좀 어디 너는 말해도 당가도 좀 좋은 걸렌데
Kali de got it.
네.
Okay.
저 좋은 거
Ale sarpa.
가서 봐. 가서 데려 봐.
Okay. So now
무슨 인식을 나잖아.
Changal.
당가도 보인데 고추고지
Jipachodan Tumo.
어디들로
So we are going to start now the section where we left off 5 weeks ago. So I'm going to find the exact page in the English. Just bear with me for one moment. It's on 98 in the Tibetan. I just... All right. 3 types of persons. 94, 96. Some are mindfulness of death.
제부 중국도 동문 나지는 봐. 어떤데? 다 중국에도 제부 송도 제부 중국을 쓰고 말이야.
So we're on the mindful, it's sectioned off as mindfulness of death. So that's where we're going to begin. We're in that new chapter now. Page 142. 3, actually, it would be. It's not numbered, that's why. It's right before the 144 is numbered. That's helpful. Okay.
What that 다 라리지 못 말বে 죽은 좀 때문에 제법이 쳐왔어. 어때 아디샤가 송 라운드 아디샤가 송 예상 아디샤 나한테 말.
Okay.
죽은 좀 때문에 제법이 쳐와. 당하라 그 바지 주지죠. 다 줄라운드라서 도들래 서로 말 당하지 때마다는 게면도 비쳐와 어디에 말বে. 주지 쳐와지. 쳐와니 되지. 출라니 시제 다시 해야 맞. 송제 다 제바 담방군지 로마제 다트에는 봐. 제바든 될 말아. 제바 담방군지 로마제 다트에는 봐달라. 마지 자와시는 때문에 수당 때는 로지다잖아 봐. 이제 뭐든 말해도 말봐.
네네.
이바 때는 로지다잖아 봐달라. 다유텔라 제벨레 주고 제베제 달레 주스. 다드는 뭐된 와. 다유텔라 제벨레 주고 다유텔라 제벨레 주고 와서 도와고서와 된쳐와서 봐. 네바 거서 봐. 어디든 말봐. 사진 걸 말어. 도와고서 된쳐와서 봐. 네바 거서 봐. 이제
맞아요.
저송 차송나 되네.
간제.
어디 다 네블란 중국들라 송래도 말봐. 네블란 중국들라 송단의 집에 좋은 것들래도 말봐. 집에 좋은으로 다 되는 막 가지고 다 사제가 주도 막 되잖아. 다 간주도 된주도 된다도 그걸로 랑런 뒤에서 말봐. 랑런 뒤에서 랑런 자손도 말해서 잠을 쫓걸로 자손 뒤도스 대나지 간주 된주게 추기 준걸로 랑런 뒤에서 말봐. 랑런 된다도 되나 총원들도 조조 집어송 셔봐서 집어 총원도 통원 나지는 봐. 딩아 딩다 통원 나지는 봐. 집어 시비 나지는 봐. 송 말봐. 송그 나는 당 가서 집에 총도 갈래는 거돼.
됐어.
다 집에 총도 통원 나서야 돼. 당 가서 된주랑 말해 된주. 사담이 대상 도하게 라드 가르스나 집에 총도 통원 나서는 봐. 된주랑. 어디 집에 총도 통원 나서는 봐. 대장나 살지 그래. 말지 그래. 집에 용 그래스. 다른데는 통원 나서야 되네. 되네 가서 그래 라바송도 말이야 라바송 대공이나 안에 녀모다 도겐사는 봉배 타바용 그랬어 타바 말이야 다 집에 집에 라장 주선다 어디서로 아버지베이나 사제도 그랬어 손도 갖다 뒤나 어디 말이야 저선도 그 좋은 뒤에 저변에 레바시 자송아인스 나는 자손다 간유 된주도 나가로 된주도 알았어 잠을 쫓고로 자손도 번다버스 어디서 되서봐.
So the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment begins with an outline of material to come, and there are 4 categories that we've gone through so far, and we're in the 4th category. The first category is the greatness of the teaching's author. And at that point in the teaching, there's the liberation life story of Lord Atisha that is given, and the qualities that Lord Atisha had. So when we're speaking of the greatness of the teacher, just as a side note, it's going to come up later, but the teaching itself that's being referred to here is the lamp for the path to enlightenment, which Lord Atisha wrote. So it begins with the greatness of Lord Atisha. Then the second is the greatness of the teaching. And then in that section it shows various points that it shows that how all the conqueror's instructions are not contradictory, so that all the teachings don't contradict themselves, and then it shows that the all of the teachings of Lord Buddha were instructions, or all the scriptures or teachings that the Buddha gave were instructions to be practiced. And then there are two other categories, Rinpoche, I believe, two more. He said, etc. So I just want to make sure anyone following. So, etc. And then we get into the next section that deals with the how to listen to and explain the teaching. So the proper way to listen to the teaching, the proper way that the teaching should be given. And then the next category is how to lead students through the actual instructions of the stages of the path. So that's the category that we're currently in. And then that begins with the section of how to rely upon the teacher that is the root of the path. And then after that, once one has relied upon the teacher, how to move forward from there. So then in that section, we have categories of how to develop certain knowledge of a general presentation of the path and the actual way to take full advantage of life of leisure and opportunity. So in there, we find categories that show us how students are led through these stages. Let me back up, I forgot one thing. So before that, there are two categories: exhortation to take full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity, and how to take full advantage of life of leisure and opportunity. In the section where there's an exhortation to take full advantage of that life of leisure and opportunity, there are three categories. The identification of what leisure and opportunity are, and then the great importance of leisure and opportunity, and the difficulty of obtaining leisure and opportunity. So that's under the section, the exhortation. And then the next section that deals with how to take full advantage of the life of leisure and opportunity then gets into what I just mentioned, of how the students are led through using these instructions. So these instructions that are being given, again, are referring to the teaching of the lamp for the path to enlightenment. And that teaching summarizes and contains all of the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, as well as the authentic Indian commentaries. So the Kangjur and the Tanjur are all included and summarized within Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment. So that is why Lama Tsongkhapa compares it to a great ocean in the abbreviated stages of the path, where he says it's an ocean of illustrious instruction, containing all of the excellent classics. So he compares it to an ocean, because if we look at the actual ocean, all of the waters and the rivers in the world eventually end up into the ocean. So it's for this reason that the lamp for the path to enlightenment is compared to an ocean, because all of the teachings of Buddhism, of the Kangjur and Tanjur, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, the authentic Indian commentaries, the Hinayana teachings, the Mahayana teachings, all of these are included within this teaching. So it's compared to an ocean because of this. What is the teaching? The teaching is for the teachings for beings of three capacities. And Lord Atisha begins the text begins in the beginning of Lord Atisha's text, The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. It states, understand that there are persons of three capacities, small, middling, and great. I shall write clearly identifying their characteristics. So the first statement that's made is that there is a person of small capacity. So what this is referring to is the teachings that are shared in common with beings of small capacity, or the pathways shared in common with beings of small capacity. And those pathways are those pathways that lead to the higher realms of cyclic existence. So the higher realms of the gods, the demigods, and the human realms. And there is an abandonment of the lower realms of the hell-hungry ghost and animal realm. So these are the pathways which lead one to the higher realms. And so understand there are persons of three capacities. Small, that is what small is referring to. Those persons who engage in pathways which lead to the higher realms. And then Atisha states middling. Medium is standing for the stages of the path that are shared in common with beings of medium capacity, or the teachings for beings of medium capacity. And those pathways lead one completely out of cyclic existence. This is an abandonment of cyclic existence altogether by abandoning the afflictions and suffering. So by abandoning the afflictions and the root of cyclic existence, then suffering is abandoned. And in the pathways shared in common with beings of medium capacity, one does so by engaging in the three highest higher trainings. By engaging in the highest higher trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom, one is able to get rid of the afflictions and then get rid of the root of cyclic existence and then the suffering of cyclic existence. So this is what is meant by middling. And then the last statement is great. Great is referring to the stages of the path for beings of great capacity, the stages of the path for those bodhisattvas who aspire to become Buddhists for the sake of all sentient beings. Those beings must engage in the common pathways as well as the bodhisattva pathway, the path which requires the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So this is a synopsis of those the meaning of small, middling, and great. And within that we find all of the teachings of Buddhism. Within those, there are no teachings that can be found outside of the scope of those three. So all those, if we look at those three, those contain all of the teachings of Buddhism. Lesser.
Tene tanaji ane loji deba bombi tsuti ngagi deba bombi tsuti ane gawa songyong gwa tela chine jongso chewa de la ane lama yireba ane woti saris marbe.
Lesser. So the way that we engage in the way that we have experiences, or the way that we experience things, are dependent upon our actions. So our actions lead to the results of our experience. And we create actions through our body, speech, and mind. There are no other place in which we create actions that have results. So these actions have consequences, be they good consequences or negative consequences. So when looking at non-virtuous activity of the body, speech, and mind, there are various degrees of non-virtue. If we create the greatest degree of non-virtue of our body, speech, or mind, anything, that this creates rebirth into a hell realm. If we create a medium degree of non-virtue through our body, speech, and mind, this creates rebirth into the hungry ghost realm. And if we create a small degree of non-virtue through our body, speech, and mind, then this creates or gives rise to the experience of the animal realm rebirth. So the same is also true, though, for virtuous activities. If one engages in virtuous activities, then there are positive results. So the greatest degree of virtuous activity gives rise to the experience of the God's realm. The medium degree of virtuous activity gives rise to the experience of the demigod's realm. And a small degree of virtuous activity gives rise to the experience of rebirth in the human realm. Okay. And if we were to look at it in a summarized way, we would just say the three body, speech, and mind. Actions of body, speech, and mind. And if we were to expand upon that, we would look at the 10 virtuous actions and the 10 non-virtuous actions, if we were to look at it in a more expanded way. Okay. So the pathway which leads to the higher realms is the pathway shared in common with beings of small capacity. And this pathway, is requires the following practices: engaging in ethics, which is the abandonment of the 10 non-virtuous activities, going for refuge to the 3 jewels of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and if one does engage in negativity, acknowledging that downfall or confessing that downfall. And by doing these practices, these are the pathways which lead to the experience of the higher realms. So in Hinduism and Christianity, we find this idea of going for refuge to God. So it's very similar, no?
Nyamungu saware, lega saware, nene kunyu pa, nene dogen papi tempo, nene kunyu papi tempo, leji kunyu to nyamungu kunyu sawad, mi deba choba tenzin, nga deba choba tenzin de, di saware diwares. Ta te deba madruwa shira tege, ane tenzin le nuware, tenzin de leji kunyu to nyamungu kunyu le, dogen papi taban nuwares. O di samar.
So the next are the pathways shared in common with beings of medium capacity. And these are those which lead to liberation. In the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, we find many negations that are made. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, etc. So there are many negations that are made. And here these negations are not negating the existence of any of these subjects. It is negating the true establishment of these subjects. There is a negation of the mode of reality, or the mode of existence that is usually misapprehended. So it is the grasping or the misapprehension of true establishment, the grasping at true establishment that is the root of cyclic existence. In looking at the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha first stated that this is the superior truth of suffering. This is the superior truth of origin. So suffering has a cause, and this is the origin. And under the category of origin, there is karma that is origin and afflictions that are origin. So at the root of that, we find the grasping at true establishment, this misapprehension. So by abandoning the grasping at true establishment, we're able to get rid of the origin, the karma that is origin, and the afflictions that are origin, and therefore get rid of that which gives rise to suffering. So one does so by realizing the lack of true establishment and then engaging in the a pathway. Ngay the denje tam ni lason, sumber jipa lamason. Okay.
Taba drinking lo shirwa. Taba the dream I make shesuna, drinking lo no was. What then Najin, Chuna deba Chuna deba maru shesuna, not deba maru shesuna, not deba was dancing no was. Tea in the bo, late on your mobile, dongel, what things are maru.
Just as the misapprehension in a dark room of a rope could cause one to believe that something is a snake, and then various emotions occur because of this mistaken view. Just like that, when one grasps at true establishment mistakenly, then this grasping at the I, or the self as being truly established, grasping at phenomena as being truly established, gives rise to the karma and the afflictions that give rise to the experience of suffering.
And the meeting Gamare, Nawa Gamare, Joanga Gamare, Pomunga Gare, Diomares, Joanga Sobata, Daja Pomunga Sobala Tune, Mas, Tasan to Yobara, Tabala Matu, Radio Maris, Tabala Matu, Radio Suna, Debatu Wars. What does one day summer?
So the I is not truly established. There is this belief that there is a true establishment of I or ego. But when we investigate or engage in analysis, we start to try to find this I. We say, is the I the I? Is the experience the I? Are the five elements the I? Are the five aggregates the I? And no, not the five aggregates, not the five elements, not the I. Is there somewhere else that we can find it? So when we engage in this investigation, we won't be able to locate where this I actually is. And then when we look at it in reality, it is merely a name or an imputation that goes on top of a basis of designation, which is just merely a collection of parts that serves as a basis for a name. So then it is the grasping at it as being truly established, that is the mistaken view, that then gives rise to all the negativities of the karma and the afflictions and the experience of suffering. So the I is merely imputed or named on a basis of designation, which is a collection of all of the aggregates and elements, etc. So going back to the pathway shared in common with beings of small capacity, the real pith or the main point is the going where refuge to the three jewels, the ethics abandoning 10 non-virtues, and the acknowledgement of downfall. So that's what we will get into in detail in this section that deals with the teaching, let's see, stages of the path that are shared in common with beings of small capacity is the heading in the Tibetan. And again, it says mindfulness of... So you'll find on the mindfulness of death section within the outline, point 1 is training, the actual training of the thought for a person of small capacity. And above that it says training the mind in the stages of the path shared with persons of small capacity. So that's the heading in the Tibetan, where we find it in the outline in the English translation. So I'm just trying to connect these for everyone who's trying to follow along. So you'll find it under the actual way to take full advantage of life of leisure and opportunity, because we again went over exhortation to take full advantage of life of leisure and opportunity, and now we're on the actual way to take full advantage of it, and the section is the training the mind in the stage of the path shared in common with persons of small capacity. So that's on the page mentioned before. So just in those couple of sentences, understand that there are persons of three capacities, small, middling, and great. We find the implicitly all of the teachings shared in pathways shared in common with beings of small capacity, the pathways shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and the pathways for beings of great capacity. So the actual way to take full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity has three sections. It begins with first is training the mind in the stages of the path shared in common with persons of small capacity. Then the next section deals with training the mind in the stage of the path shared with persons of medium capacity. And then the third, training the mind in the stage of the path for persons of great capacity, or beings of great capacity. So this is the beginning presentation.
제부 중은 상바 제부 중은 상바 정 뭐지 상바의 집이 체지 달라로 로바토가 가봐 사지 송ren도
Less so.
yeah
And then, it's interesting. Then the next section in the Tibetan says there are 3 divisions of the section called training the mind and the stages shared in common, the stages of the past shared in common with persons of small capacity. So we have 3 sections. The actual training of, this is on 144 in English, the actual training of the thought for a person of small capacity, the measure of the attitude of a person of small capacity, and then clearing up misconceptions concerning the attitude of a person of small capacity. So these are the first 3 points that are made.
다 제부 중은 상바정 담불라니 지대 심마 되니 질로 제바다 지대 심마 디 터템 봐서 말봐 지대 심마 되니 로 제바서 지대 심마 달하다메 대상 토나냐 비주 중원들 되어 가려서나 하다메 대상 토야 되어요 말봐
Shema.
아는 내 손제 가봐요 말봐 내 손도 되는 내 반주 내 상바지 되는 나서 도는 거 가지고 가지고 상바지네 군대가 가려와서나 하다미 대선 투하도 보여와서 하다미 대선 투도 되봐 상바대 집에 중국 상바이지로 집에 중국 상바장 무스 집에 중국 상바 좋아서나 하다미 대선 투도 상바 내 손도 도는 거 가지고 가지고 상바도 되서 말봐
Next, developing a state of mind. So the actual training of a thought for persons of small capacity has 2 divisions. Developing a state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, and then relying on the means for achieving happiness in the next life. So the method for achieving happiness in the next life. So next, this first part, developing a state of mind. It's it's developing this. The dopa is like a aspiration or a want, like wish. Dopa. So it's a wish. Developing a state of mind is really, if we were to really be literal with it, it's like wishing. So developing this wish to strive diligently for the sake of future lives. So we're transforming our mind into a state that's a wish for this. So I'm sorry to bounce around with words, but I wanted to make it more literal. So it's developing this desire, this dopa, this wish, and what is one wishing for? What does one want if he or she is a person of small capacity? He or she wishes to be free from the lower realms, so he or she has renunciation relative to the lower realms of cyclic existence, and he or she wishes or wants to have rebirth in the higher realms of gods, humans, and demigods. So here, he or she wishes or wants to develop a mind that wishes to strive diligently for the sake of future lives. And what in the future life does he or she want? He or she wishes to have rebirth in the higher realms and not have rebirth in the lower realms. So if we were to say, show the wish of a person of small capacity, we would posit, if we were in debate style, if we would say, show the desire or the wish of a person of small capacity, the person answering would say, to be reborn in the higher realms of the gods, demigods, and humans, and to be free from the lower realms. This is his or her wish.
and then deba yoba sanji yung marwa and then juka duwasana jiten shema di ta den bas ta kunjo son la chozun du yugane noge chugong suje kanto chozo son deba la shadan chia hotel hedo wajir.
So then the next section that says relying on the means or relying on the method for achieving happiness in the next life is showing how one does this. So just wishing for it will not cause it to happen. So just wishing that one will have rebirth in the higher realms will not cause that. There is a method for achieving that happiness. The method is going for refuge to the 3 jewels of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, engaging in ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities, and acknowledging one's downfall if he or she has committed a non-virtue. So this is the means for achieving happiness in the next life. So we're looking at the wish to and then the means to. So this is a mind that is looking towards the future life. This is specifically wanting to not be born in the lower realms, and a mind that wants in future lives to have these rebirths of the gods, humans, and demigods. So the mind is looking towards future life. Future, not this life, future life.
Temba samba dance. That the Jin Shama Daniel had a made to be Sanlo to Yongala, then send the Madaba, Madaba Santa Wumde. Send the Yuri to Maneba. That send the Yuri to Maneba's tongue. I don't think they came to Kangalo, and the Loja Nazilla, the Margashan of Marbe, Dorota, what the new Santa in Samarbe. Jiden the Rin to Maneba, Choa Jesu Temba, Samba dance, Choa Mataba Triade, Mataba Santang waters.
The Tambo.
Remedy.
Okay.
Jiten the Rin to Maneba, Choa Jesu Temba, Sambas.
Lesser. So, developing a mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, or developing this wish, has two parts. The first is the mindfulness of death, the contemplation that you will not remain long in this world. So here we will find the teaching on impermanence, the momentary disintegration. And we have many examples of, if we look at history, of all of those who have come before us and have died. So there's no escaping the death. It's certain we will die. And we have many examples to prove that when we look back at all those who have. So this section deals with impermanence and the actual reality that there is no escaping the fact that we will not remain very long in this world. So this is the first part of how one develops this wish, this mind.
Joa Shama Meba than Hama Meba ina, and then to see where Maduas, and Joa Hama you are, Joa Shama you are, Marbe, Shezona, and then also Donka Nibatiana, Donka Saban Dronavis, Shezona, Levinibat Yugore, Lobosabal Dores, Yang Shezona, Lobosabal Dor, Tukurajan, Logoris, or Denizona, so Shama Pensia and also the one doing Mares, what is uncle to Marbe?
If there is no past or future life, then higher realm, lower realm, none of this makes any difference whatsoever. But because there is certainly a past life and future life, there is a need for this discussion. And it's like leaving an old hotel and moving in to a new one when we die. So we will certainly take on a hotel or a new body in the future. So we discard this body and we take on a new one. And if we wish to have happiness, experience happiness in that new body, in that new body or experience, then it's necessary to have the throwing or propelling virtuous karma that will create that happy experience. So this is what we need to realize, is that if we want to have in the future happiness, then we will have to engage in the causes that will create that happiness.
and the Sheba Kana Shungasan, Sheba Hama, Toma Mebaris, Unjonga, Toma Mebaris. I think also make Ombula Suba, Ombun to us, Ombu Yazan Anja Hama Yuaris, Ombul Toma Mebaris. What is it, Marva?
So there are three proofs or reasons given for the existence of previous lives. The first is the breath, the breathing in and out. The breathing in and out that we do came from a previous breathing in and out that came from a previous breathing in and out. It was never caused by non-breathing in and out. It was a previous breathing in and out. So when we look at that, we find beginningless breathing in and out. So then we find the existence of previous lives, beginningless lives where we were breathing in and out. The next is consciousness itself. Consciousness came from a previous consciousness that came from a previous consciousness. Non-consciousness has never caused consciousness. Therefore, we find beginning as consciousness and can posit beginningless birth and therefore posit previous lives. And the last is the existence of the sense powers themselves. The sense powers came from previous sense power that came from previous sense power. When we look at it in that way, no non-sense power has never caused sense power. We find beginningless sense power, therefore we posit beginningless lives, therefore we posit past lives. So these are three reasons that are given to establish the existence of previous lives.
That's in the Amal Ami Sheba, Pami Sheba Yorova. That Pami Sheba the Kane Yorasana, Maju Sheba, the Pami Sheba, Maju Sheba the Rego Maris, Kumo Sheba Lukan Yomaris, Padu Sheba Yomaris, Tenama, Joel Toma Mebaris, what is on Marva?
We could ask, does our consciousness maybe come from our parents? Is it our mother's consciousness or something of this nature? And we can see that that's not so, because it's clearly a different consciousness. Their states of knowing are not the same. What we know and our parents know are different. So it is not the same consciousness that is there. It's obviously a different consciousness. It's a consciousness that came from a previous moment of consciousness that then, if we look at our when we were born, that consciousness came from the intermediate state consciousness, which came from the previous life's consciousness. And then we find this beginningless consciousness, or beginningless mind or consciousness. And then we see that there are past lives or beginningless lives. And this is how we state that consciousness comes into being. It's different, obviously, than that of the parents because of the different information that it contains, or the different knowing that it contains.
Sije Tamali Iji Shiba Yoris, Marba, Migi Shiba, Nai Shiba, Nai Shiba, Ji Shiba, Lu Shiba, Iji Shiba, de Sije Tamali Yoris, Senji Ranji Vesawas, Jamana, Iji Shiba de Jiba Tanji Tag Nuba Yoris, Chu Tanji Shia Nuba Yoris, Sije Tamale, Sanji Rig Chad Yoris, Rite, Iji Shiba Jaguars, Marba, Iji Shiba Jaguars.
All sentient beings possess mental consciousness, and therefore all sentient beings have Buddha potential. When looking at consciousness, there are six consciousness: eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, tactile consciousness, and mental consciousness. And the Buddha potential is the mental consciousness, because the mind is in the nature of clear light and not stained. There's not naturally a stain in the mind. And therefore, because all sentient beings possess this mind, which has this nature, all sentient beings necessarily possess Buddha potential or Buddha nature.
Sheba Yuza, Sheba Yima, Sheba Ji, Sheba Regumadu, Sheba Maima, Sheba Reayomaris. De Wunumadu, Trotan and De Umudos. De Saltana, De Chere, Trotan and De Umudos. Tenaji, Sheba Go, Sheba Hamaladene, Sheba Yumaris. What the Tanga that do there is one.
If we're looking at the use of correct signs or perfect reasons, as it's sometimes translated, consciousness always came from a previous consciousness. There's something that isn't consciousness couldn't create the consciousness itself. Just like this rice crop came from this year's rice crop came from a previous year's rice crop. It came from a previous rice crop. There isn't something that isn't rice crop that can create rice crop. It has to be concordant with its result. Therefore, consciousness has always come from a previous consciousness, and therefore we posit beginningless consciousness, because there is no possibility that non-consciousness can create consciousness. Another thing we can look at is that there are many sentient beings dying, and then there are many sentient beings being born. And what is the relationship that we find here? And the relationship is that the sentient beings that are dying are the ones that are being born. So this is where how we can explain this, the birth and death. And just a translator's note, there are other realms in Buddhism other than just this world where humans abide and so forth. All sentient beings have had beginningless lives. Because all sentient beings have had beginningless lives, we can surely state that all sentient beings are our mothers. We've had these relationships because we're sentient beings, and other sentient beings, all sentient beings have had beginningless lives. So therefore, we can use this as a reason for stating that sentient beings are our mothers.
And 매바 차고 말이 저와셔마 요하르스나 and 저와셔마 요바데 가수 가르주 거다 시칼라무든 되샤다 제비 and 되샤다 지는 시소나 and 시칼라무 대주 되샤 요하르스 되샤 요서 대 시바데 셔마 kü이 저와래는 그래스 kü이 하만 되샤다 지바 인자 선들 kü이 저와래 버래 선들은 되샤다 지바 인자 서셔마 kü이 저와래 그래스 되샤다 마지바 이나 저와신다 지래 그래스.
So how do we know there are future lives? What is the sign of a future life? This current life that we are experiencing is a result of our previous life's time of death and the attachment that we possessed. So if at the time of death we still have attachment, then we will necessarily take on a rebirth within cyclic existence. If we do not have attachment at the time of death, we no longer have attachment, then we will not take on a rebirth. We will take on a rebirth somewhere else, not within cyclic existence. Rinpoche said a different birth. And translators note this doesn't mean birth in the sense of cyclic existence. It's a different birth would maybe be a loaded word, a different state of being. If one does not have attachment at the time of death, then he or she will arise as a different state of being than one being born in cyclic existence.
So
we are moving out of an old hotel and moving into a new hotel when we die. We're discarding our old aggregates and we're moving into new aggregates. So we die. So it's just this big circle, korajap. It means going around and around and around. Rinpoche said it before, I'm sorry, I forgot to say it, but going around and around and around. So I believe at this point we'll take a short break. If anyone needs...
단지된 심마된 로제바단 지된 심마 디터 템바 지된 심마된 로제바라 니진 지된데 연도 만해봐 쳐와져서 좀 선바스 단 천데 가서 그래 연이 내가 말 샤산다고 말해 선바단 지된 심마 제단 좀 로아니지도 So
then we have, just going through it again, the order, the actual training for the thought of a person of small capacity, the two divisions. Developing a state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, and relying on the means for achieving happiness in the next life. So the first, developing a state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, has two categories. The mindfulness of death, contemplation that you will not remain long in this world. One will not escape death. There is certainty of death. and then contemplating what will occur in your future life, the happiness or suffering of the two types of beings. So here, two types of beings are referring to those beings in the lower realms and those beings in the higher realms.
Chewa tenpa magumbi nyemi, chewa matapasan dana pyon chibares, chewa matapasan matana nyemi chiba jun yuwares, wata sonda maraba, chewa matembi nyemi, chewa matapasan dana pyon yuwares, matapasan dana chuyla san kukure, yabu yungures, chewa matapasan matana ane nyemi mo yuwares, tala tene deba mo basa wadana chigres. Nyemi sena junro jun. Ya. Chewa matembi nyemi jirwa. Chewa matembi nyemi gombi pen. Chewa matembi gomba ina pen yuwares. Pen de nyemi rendwa. Ta chewa matembi nyemi. Chewa tembi nyemi. Chetabu she nas. Chewa gombi sulo tombo ne. Te yu tenla nyingpo lemba yuba la shinju loje les. Chewa matembi nyemi je. Ta kanta shinju loje te imare. Nden dongen papi tenpa ho, nden kunju papi tenpa ho, nden gopa papi tenpa ho, nden lang papi tenpa ho. Nden dongen papi tenpa ho sayadile naba jimarbe. Mata dongen wa, tongwa da meba jimarbe. Mata dongen wa tongwa dongen tempi naba je. Deji mata chudu, dongen tempi naba je, kunju tempi naba je, gotenga naba je, langtenga naba je, chudu yudro. Ta tombo je te dongen naba je te imbare. Matabala taban zimi shinjulus. Ane dongen da tukangalo, ane ngan matabar kasugre. Matabar ediyor. Taban zimi lo shedes. Matabar insan ko taban zimi lo shede. Tabar da dün ma insan dün zimi lo shede. Ane ngan matabar insan taban zimi lo shedes. Matabala taban zimi shinjulus lo shejiche. Tene mata dungyawa la dawanzebi lo ane mata dunghe tungwa zangwa la mazangwanzebi lo da meba la da durubanzebi lo je shinji lo togo tingisa marbe dunghe debi naba je lo je mata bala tabanzebi lo je mata dungyawa Dungan wala dewan zebi loxie, mata dungan tongwa, zangyo da tuanxie xe tongwa, ma tongwa zebi loxie. Ane da madruba la da druba zebi lo, xinji loxie togo tingsa marbe.
So the four, let me start in the right place. So the mindfulness of death has 4 parts. So this is the section, the mindfulness of death, contemplation that you will not remain long in this world. So there are 4 parts. The faults of not cultivating the mindfulness of death. So the downfall of not cultivating this. And then the benefit of such cultivation. So these are the first 2. So the negativity of not thinking about death, that death will occur, the impermanence of our position, if you will, our impermanence, our inevitable death. So it's a downfall if we don't think about it, and it will benefit us if we do. So this is the second section. The third is the kind of mindfulness of death that you should develop, and then the fourth is how to cultivate mindfulness of death. So the first section is the fault of not cultivating mindfulness of death. Here, this deals with initially the first. All right. The first is the faults of not cultivating the mindfulness of death. So when the Buddha expounded the 4 Noble Truths initially, he stated first, this is the superior truth of suffering. Then this is the superior truth of origin. This is the superior truth of cessation. And this is the superior truth of path. And among these 4 superior truths, there are 16 attributes or 16 aspects, 4 aspects for each of the 4 noble truths. So the first noble truth, the truth of suffering, has 4 aspects: impermanence, suffering, emptiness, and selflessness. So here, this is referring to perceiving misperceptions that occur, perceiving the impermanent to be permanent. So perceiving things that are momentary to be permanent and not be momentary, be static. Seeing suffering as happiness, seeing things that are actually suffering as delightful or feeling happy about them. Emptiness, seeing things that are impure impure as pure and not empty, or having some inherent pureness, and they aren't empty. And then selfless is that the mistaken belief is that there is an actual self. So in here, it goes into the where it says, it talks about in the Lamrim Chenmo, the impure to be pure. That's speaking of emptiness, suffering to be happiness, impermanent to be permanent, and selflessness to have a self. So impure is referring to the opposite of emptiness. This is the first of the first four aspects of the first noble, the 4 aspects of the first noble truth, and there are 16 because each of the 4 noble truths has 4. Sorry about the jumble.
신지루 jel에 마타발라 타반제베 신지루 신지루 니 담보 나비 군조도스 마타발라 타반제베 로데게 네 추야부 두발 너그레스 데 누우레스 너그레스 마르베 너 군조로 달라 차라니레스 타반제베 단진들라 라바드 참니 요레스 타반제베 단진들라 라바드 참니 요레스 라바드 차라니레 Rabi mataba chawala machijam was. Taji rabat garson, Tangasule Nashig Maris on much Kangal Nashig Maris. Chetan Sugar, Tarin Sugamare, Tarin Sugaris, Mashibat Yungaris, but the Mata Tanzi Rabaris, Tanzi Rabba.
Tearing a shigamare.
Tarin Sugaris, Tarin Sugamare. Okay.
That's so. I'll read that. The Injike Lo Rinpoche. Okay, so the faults of not cultivating the mindfulness of death. As previously mentioned, there are 4 errors that impede your taking full advantage of your life: conceiving the impure to be pure, suffering to be happiness, the impermanent to be permanent, and the selfless to have a self. Initially, it is the mere conception of the impermanent to be permanent that is the avenue of much injury. The conception is twofold, coarse and subtle. So here, the impermanent to be permanent. So thinking that it doesn't need to be, I will never die, because we see death, but it means that, I won't die today. So there's nothing to think about. I'm not going to die today. So this is the coarse form of this conception of impermanent to be permanent, is thinking that I am not going to die today. Rinpoche, the sanlo nge shigamare sanlo yomare, tearing shigamare. Okay, so both. I'm not going to die, or I'm not going to die today.
Tangalo Jala Shigmare, Doji Shigmare, and Shabajunga Shigmare, Dunta Chili Shigmare, or to Santa Matani,
So thinking I'm not going to die, or thinking I'm not going to die this year, or thinking I'm not going to die this month, or thinking I'm not going to die this week, or I'm not going to die this this time or now. So thinking in this way would be the conceiving the impermanent to be permanent in a raw or coarse way.
Tala Tanzi Tara Niles, Tanzi Tara Nile, Rabbi Matabala, Choala, Machinhabi, Nabaratuba, Nebugo, Husa. Kaso Tanzi Rabato, Rabbi Matabatan, Rabbi Tanzi Jazmarba.
Yes, sir. So here it says, conception is twofold, coarse and subtle. Of these two, in the case of your coarse impermanence, which is your death, the avenue of injury is the very thought, I will not die. So this idea of I'm not going to die.
Rabbi Mataba Chawasana, Dayin de la Chawmarba, Dayin, dead. Dayin Sana, Chawasana, Mambarwa. Chawasana, Deba, Deba Marba. Chawasana, Dayin Chijima, Dayin, what the Chawala, and then how to check with the Achikamari Euro, the Tanzi Rabaris.
So this idea that if we look at dying, that's the future, and death is over. So it's the etymology within the Tibetan wording of it. Here is the thought that I will not die. So I will not, this experience, this isn't going to happen. So this is the coarse misconception of the impermanent as permanent.
Rabbi Mataba Choasan Tabaina, Rabbi Mataba San Kukuruda. Tamazu Kamba Lonu, Mission word, the Rabba Mumudu, Rabbi Mataba. Not Chigri Samaina, Rabbi Mataba Kuguru, Chigmarisana, Tanzi Rabba.
So we have many examples. We have the examples of a house that breaks down, and the impermanence of that, or the impermanence of the Kamba Dang Garisumpre. A car crash, houses. Rinpoche is giving examples of. We know that things end. This is the coarse impermanence of these things that we're referring to, the actual ending of them, their impermanence, their coarse impermanence, not a momentary subtlety, just the fact that they will perish. That's the coarse impermanence.
Tanzi Tamada is a woman. Tanzi Tamada Nazo, Tomba Chidune, Chebatan Lanson, could never Rayo Marwa. Kasure. Chebituso, ne Kunjo, Juranjero, Gabrajo, Gainsu,
Gawa.
Gaba, Chewa.
Gaba.
Chewa.
Gongamebichi.
Tangashuna, Tsaro.
Tsar.
Daying, Gentle, what the Judu Mevasantana, Tanzi Chamism.
Oh, that's right. So the fact that there is a death itself is the course, but the dying, the momentary dying that we're experiencing right now, the momentary disintegration, is that subtle impermanence. The first moment of that we begin this dying. That's why the word dying and death become important, because we're dying the first moment, and every moment that goes by we're dying closer to death. That was just a closer to death translator's note. So we're this moment, we're dying by the moment, and that's the subtle impermanence.
What is that? Matabala Tabanzi Vishilu Tambo. Nebu Gunjuro, Tela Tara Nile, Rabbi Mataba Chiwala, Machinyapi, number 2, Bandini, Nebu Gos, Rabbi Matabala, and then also the Chenmo, the Machinyapi Sala Juarez, or taking out of Chuishable no waters, Chudrubala, Chibichungu Chu, Chibundingi Chu, Chimichu Drubala, the Tabitanzi, no waters, Nebu Gunjuros.
And so this thought that I will not die is harmful to practice. Harms our ability to do dharma. If we think we won't die, it harms our ability to engage in the pathways in common with small and medium capacity and the practices for beings of great capacity. This idea is harmful is the most literal. It harms our ability to do so. Rinpoche mentioned that once before too, maybe twice, and I forgot to translate that it is a harms our ability. This idea of not dying.
단들라양 다주 tar chewa 다주 tar chewa시 온냐바 군라 외장스 다주 타 chewa 타마 chewa지 먹가 신의 외등 가서 나 시그래서 뭐 여러다 먹가 시고로 대개지 요마로 대개지 매서 나지질 나 시그래서 나지질 나 시그래 시도서 중국을 삼바데 생전 삼마를 요하르스 삼마를 요하르 다주 chewa시 온냐바네 군라 외장 생전 삼마를 요하르스 냐마르지 드림시냐바 냐마르지 다른 책 말이냐바데 마셔봐도 용으로스데 단지 말베데 단지.
So everyone has the idea that death will come later at the end. So there's this end later on. This is going to happen. Not now. It's nothing to worry about now. But there's this distant event that will happen of death. So it says, however, with each passing day, people think, I will not die today. I will not die today, clinging to this thought until the moment of death. Every day that passes, there isn't this mindfulness, this idea that there's a potential or a possibility that today is the day that one will die. Clinging to this thought until the moment of death. So this idea that, oh, today isn't the day. Well, there is a day that will come that will be that day. So it's certainty. There is certainty with that. So we will not be able to engage well in the practice of Dharma, the Dharma teachings for small, medium, or great capacity. If we have this thought or this idea that I will not die today, I'm not going to die, this idea that it is in the distance is a harm to our practice.
단지 속으로 로시데 쿨니에베 요로 니에베 마구나 되네 로데기 지네 아니 제비 중은 죄시발라 디거래 닝이 죄시발라 디거래 제비 죄시발라 디거래 죄 아버지 뭐 말해서 어디서 말해
I thought, I will not die today, clinging to this thought until the moment of death. If you are obstructed by such an attitude and do not bring its remedy to mind, you will continue to think that you will remain in this life. So if one is grasping, one is grasping at self. If one is believing that there isn't this vulnerability, if you will, or this potential to perish, then there's a grasping at a self there. And if one has this idea, then one won't be able to apply the remedy, which is the knowledge of the lack of true establishment, and will, as a result of, it says, an attitude, and do not bring its remedy to mind. So as a result of this grasping at self, which is grasping at the idea that one will not perish today or die today, one's ability to practice any of the scope, small, medium, or great, is hindered, and it becomes it makes it so it isn't possible to really practice. Looking at so we can use analysis and the use of correct signs of subject statement sign, and by saying the subject I is impermanent because of it being a product or a functioning thing or an arisal. So the subject I is impermanent because it is an arisal. The subject I is impermanent because it is a product. The subject I is impermanent because it is a functioning thing. So this becomes an antidote, utilization of these correct signs that prove this impermanence is the antidote to the grasping at its opposite, which is the mistaken view of this permanence itself. Dying. So the subtle impermanence is similar to water that's flowing. How our life is ending in this way that like water is just flowing, and it's happening in a momentary way. And this is the subtle impermanence that we have. This process of dying that is happening, like water flowing. When we're small, we think we're so strong and able. We don't think of old. And then suddenly, we won't think of these things, and we'll notice that our hair has become very white, and we've become old, and we won't have practiced Dharma because we won't have thought of this need. This is the Yanjur Surana? Like a what? So Rinpoche gave again the analogy of the water flowing, and our disintegration in a similar way. It's just we're disintegrating in the same way that a water would flow in that process, in that way, and that's our subtle impermanence. We're dying or disintegrating. Disintegrating is more literal, but we were using the word dying before, so I want everyone to relate it. So it's this disintegration that's happening like water flowing. Meditators on impermanence use this example of the water flowing or river flowing when they're thinking of impermanence. So by thinking about this again and again, we're able to harm the idea that we will not die today. Where this serves as an opponent, or literal harm the idea that we won't be able to die today. Then, I think I read that part. Then, as long as you have this attitude, you will continually think only of how to achieve happiness and evade suffering in this life alone. Thinking, I need this and I need that. I need this and that. You will not engage in religious practice because you do not think about things of great importance, such as future lives, liberation, and omniscience. I added an extra sentence. Sorry.
Then
So all we think about is obtaining good food and having drinks and worrying about feeling good and being happy in just this life. So if we think in this way, we think along these lines or in this way, then religious practice won't occur. We won't have a religious practice.
So
타바당 탄지 쳔발라 수비 된 쳔보 달라 나바주비 오네 로마지유사 네 타비랑다 dunri랑다 상지 고무도 랑도들 나주 로용 말았을 선대상당.
If we're only thinking about the things of this life, I need this and that, and we won't engage in religious practice. Therefore, it will harm our ability to engage in those pathways which lead to the gods and the humans, and those pathways which lead to liberation, those pathways which lead to omniscience. So this idea harms our ability to do those practices because we are not thinking of our future lives. We're only worried about pleasantries of this particular life. So it says you will not engage in religious practice because you do not think about things of great importance. So things of great importance are the small, medium, and great scopes. So because one doesn't think about things of great importance such as future lives, liberation, and omniscience. So there is only a reflection on the things of this life and needs of this life and not on the religious practice. So there won't be any real power to the realization or any power to, I'll come up with a better word, but there won't be any real power to any of the realizations of the small, medium, or great scope if one hasn't abandoned this idea that one won't die today. So if one hasn't gotten rid of this perception or this attitude, then one will have a minimal amount of realization or understanding into these others of the teachings. Rinpoche said one won't have any great abilities, because of grasping at the impermanence, grasping at this permanent self. Okay. So it says, moreover, let me go back. Although you may perchance exchange in study, reflection, meditation, and so forth, it will be only for the sake of this life, and whatever virtue you create will be of meager strength. So that's going back to the won't have power, the meager strength. So similar. Moreover, since your practice will be involved with wrongdoing, sins, and infractions, it would be rare for these virtuous activities not to be mixed with causes of miserable rebirths. Even if you try to engage in practices directed towards future lives, we will not be able to prevent the laziness or procrastination, thinking, I will do it eventually. So here, because one who is involved with things just of this life will be involved in such negative actions through the body, speech, and mind, even if it's intermingled with practices, those practices will have so much non-virtue mixed with them that they won't have the power or strength to give rise to anything but the rebirth into the lower realms. Not those actions, but one's practice won't give rise to anything but the experience of rebirth into the lower realms because of the lack of strength of the practices, or the meager strength that the practices would have if they were imbued with this idea of I will not die, or I grasping at the self as being permanent. So this is, wait 1 second, I had something, oh I did, okay, Dixon. So this is something that we need to go over again and again, and in the future we will go over again.